How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. It's Monday, so it's time for the Monday agenda. It's going to look a little bit different to what it usually does because I'm talking to Johnny Kokborg, a Danish journalist, ahead of the FC Midtjylland game in the Champions League qualifiers. I was really nervous for this game. I'm not going to lie to you. It's an absolutely huge game for Celtic, but there are a few issues in the FC Midtjylland camp. The friction between the manager and a couple of players giving me a little bit of hope. So if you want to hear about that, Johnny Kokborg is going to tell you everything you need to know about FC Midtjylland. Before I get into that video, before I show you the interview, if you do like these videos, do hit the subscribe button below and do drop a comment. Let me know what you think about the game. Are you nervous? How do you think Celtic are going to get on? Are we well prepared? What could we do differently going into the game? Or just give me your starting lineup as well. Drop a comment below. Like the video as well, because it helps more people see the video as well. I'm growing up the subscriber list. Still a huge number of people aren't subscribed that are watching the video. So if you do like the videos, just drop the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time a video goes live. So without further ado, here is Johnny Kokborg telling you everything you need to know about FC Midtjylland. Now, there's an absolutely huge game coming up tomorrow in the Champions League qualifiers. Celtic take on FC Midtjylland of Denmark in the second round of the qualifiers, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined on the line by Johnny Kokborg to discuss this. Johnny, thanks for joining me today.
No problem, Enda. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm nervous going into this game because it's a massive game for Celtic. It's a huge game in terms of the future of the club and what's going to happen over the next couple of years. But I'm interested to see what this is like for FC Midtjylland. So last year was the first time that they were in this competition in the Champions League. How big a game is this seen for them? Is it seen as vital that they get to the Champions League?
It's a good question. I think maybe it was a little bigger last year because it was the first time they managed to qualify for the Champions League. But of course now they've gotten a taste of the Champions League football, and I think it's going to be a big game for them. But I think actually it was a little bigger last year because the chances were a little better. They have a difficult road ahead if they manage to beat Celtic, so the odds were in their favor last year, even though it was also some difficult draws they got in the qualifiers. But because it was a little less difficult last year, it was maybe more highly anticipated than it is this year.
Since last year, they have a new manager as well. How has he taken to the club so far? What's his style of football, and generally how have the fans taken to him?
Well, it was a massive surprise that Bo Henriksen got the job in the first place. Brian Priske, who was the coach for 2 years and made them champions and also got them into the Champions League, he got a new job, but if he didn't get that job proposal, he would have been fired, is the story we know at BT, where I work, and we also have written about this. So it was anticipated they were good at hiring internally, getting a youth coach maybe or assistant coach to take the job. But they chose Bo Henriksen, who has never had a job in the top of the Danish league at all. He is known for bringing AC Horsens, which is a small club, to the Super League and keeping them up. So he's actually a coach who mostly has experience with small teams, lesser known teams. And he's been working as a pundit for the last year, and suddenly he was in the mix for this job, and everybody was very, very surprised. It was maybe one of the biggest stories in Danish football on that in that regard, in coaching regard, in the last couple of years. So it's a very good question. What does he bring to the table? Because no one's really sure. He has a lot of passion, and I think the Celtic fans are going to see him scream and show his passion a lot on the sideline. But it's still very early to say what his tactical approach is going to be. They played a game Friday, the first game of the season, against Odense, where they lost in the last minute in a little freak goal on a direct corner. And they played a 4-3-3. And I think it was more, usually they play with a 4-2-3-1 with two holding midfielders. But at the moment, there's a lot of speculation about 3 star players who are not in the squad and probably won't be in the squad tomorrow. So it's I think it's a good time for Celtic to meet Midtjylland, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, we might talk about those players in just a sec, but is there a feeling that this job might be a little bit too big for Bo Henriksen, or are you guys waiting to see?
I think it's a little bit of both. Of course, he has to get the chance to prove himself, but it's a major gamble from FC Midtjylland, no doubt about that. And I think it's a win-win situation for Bo Henriksen, because he will always have a good name in Denmark, and he will, if it doesn't manage to get success in FC Midtjylland, he can get a job in a less known club or a smaller club. But for Midtjylland, it's a big gamble, and it's a big gamble, especially because they have ambition to win the Danish championship every year, and they have the squad for that, the budget for it as well, and they want to do good in Europe. Even though they might lose to Celtic, they still have a possibility to go to the Europa League group stage. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see.
I don't think there's a lot of optimism from Celtic fans about this game. I think people are very much looking at FC Midtjylland as a team that Celtic will struggle against. How is this game being viewed in Denmark? Are Celtic seen as a real threat to Midtjylland, or do they think that they should beat them?
I think, as the story of Celtic, the history of the club is major, and in that way, I think every time Celtic would be favorites, because Midtjylland is a small club. They've only existed since 1999. Built on 2 clubs who are older, but still the Midtjylland club is not very old. And the success in Europe has only come in the last couple of years. So I think in Denmark we see Celtic as the favorites, but we know from the last couple of years that you should never count Midtjylland out, even though there's a new manager and there's a few star players leaving, and they're in the middle of a transition from the team that won the championship into a new a mold to a new championship team. So I think we're looking at Celtic as favorites, but Midtjylland could thrive in an underdog role.
It's quite a similar story to Celtic, because obviously they had a managerial switch as well going into this game, so there's a lot of transitional periods going into this at this point in time. You mentioned Midtjylland's history there and how young a club it is. They have a very interesting structure. It's been written about quite a bit. The same guy that owns Brentford owns Midtjylland as well. Are they well liked in Denmark? Are they respected? Do people like what they're doing, or do people dislike it in terms of how different it might be?
The thing is about Midtjylland, they have been a little bit ridiculed of the facts, also of the Matthew Benham years, the Brentford owner who now owns Midtjylland as well. But also before, because even when they first were founded in 1999, already back then they had big ambitions. And back then it was only FC Copenhagen, who Celtic have played against a couple of times, and Brøndby. There was the 2 clubs in Denmark. There were, and the rest of the team just battled for the rest. But it was also always a struggle between Brøndby and FC Copenhagen. And Midtjylland suddenly appeared, and it took some years, but slowly they worked the way in and put up like a wedge between the 2 teams. Other teams have also been there, but their success has been a little bit ridiculed, because they come from Jylland in Denmark, which is a part of the country who always I could translate it into English. There's a lot of a banter going from the Copenhagen region to that part of Denmark, like a local kind of thing. So they're made fun of, and even when they won, people were just like, "Oh, they're just farmers," and looked down upon. But they have shown themselves over and over again with the Champions League group stage, with the championships, with big sales, and also good transfers coming into the club, that they're here to stay. And no, it's not. Brøndby have won the championship last year, but have been out of the mix for 15 years or something. So it's more Midtjylland versus FC Copenhagen, and I actually think at the moment Midtjylland has like a historical edge over the other teams, and therefore this season is also very important regarding to the first question you asked about how big the game is. So it's a little funny story about them because they have a lot of success, but they are not always credited with it.
Okay, very interesting. So you mentioned a couple of players there that, you know, they're not exactly getting into the team at the minute. Sorry, Kaba is one of them, if I'm correct in saying. I was reading that he was exiled from the team for not refusing to play. So is there a bit of a few issues in the squad at the minute, or what's causing the rift?
Yeah, there is a few issues. There's something going on, but I think it's the issue of players wanting to leave because a lot of players gave their word that they would take the Champions League group stage and kind of be rewarded with a transfer after that. So they have a little bit of aftermath of that success last year. They have to deal with now, and Midtjylland are in a good position to sell. So they all, of course, want to get the most amount of money. Sorry, Kabar is someone who's wanted to leave for a little while now. The problem is, are they able to find a club that meet their valuation at the moment? He's been good in some periods and a little bad in other periods, so he's a little inconsistent. So it's going to be interesting to see if there is a club for him. But I think if he makes a stunt like that, I hope he has something in the backhand. And then there's Franco Onyeka, who most likely will go to Brentford, the club which the Midtjylland owner Matthew Benham also owns, but it's still not completely gone through. So there's a little bit of waiting going on, because who is going to play instead when they don't know if the players are leaving or not. I think Onyeka and Kabar and those two players won't be playing tomorrow, and they're part of the starting lineup. Also, Jens Lys Kajuste, who was at the Euros for Sweden. He and Onyeka has had a great partnership at the holding midfield, just in front of the defense, and been a key part of the FC Midtjylland success. So they won't be a part of the game tomorrow. I think I saw Ava Mabil, who's an Australian winger, who was left out at the first league game, but I think I saw him entering the plane heading to Glasgow, so he's going to be there and he's going to play a role. But the other three players are going to be a big issue missing out.
Okay, so in terms of the Midtjylland team, then what's the strengths and weaknesses? Where can Celtic have a bit of pleasure against them, and also where should they be worried?
I think Celtic is going to have to strike the defense, because obviously, you know, Erik Sviatchenko from his time in Celtic, and he's been a great player for many years for Midtjylland, but he had a very good partnership with Alexander Scholz, who was sold to a Japanese club just a couple months back. So he's partnering up with a new teammate who is not yet defined, because they just bought a Brazilian center back who's not going to be registered for those games. So he's going to find a new rhythm, and it was visible in the first league game against Odense that is a bit shaky defense, and that's a new situation for Midtjylland, because they've built their success on a great defensive structure. So I think if Celtic can manage to kind of cut them off guard in the defense, there is a lot of possibility. The thing they should be aware of is the individual quality of some of the offensive players from FC Midtjylland. Pione Sisto has been a little bit inconsistent, but he is a great talent. He scored in the first league game against Odense, and he can make the difference, a little creative spark. And the same goes for Anders Dreyer, who's a under 21 player from Denmark, who has a great left foot and scores great goals and is fast as well. So they have to Celtic have to keep track of the offensive talent that Midtjylland still has and will show against Celtic tomorrow. So yeah, that's the two key factors, I think.
So if you were to look at this then, and if I asked you for a prediction, who do you think is going to win?
Tomorrow, I think Celtic's going to win a narrow, like 1-0 maybe, or 2-1. But I think it's going to be open when they go back to Denmark. And then anything can happen. But I think Celtic have the edge right now, and going to take the draw home after the two games. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as people might think, just looking at the odds.
Well, hopefully you're right, and hopefully Celtic do. And Johnny Kokborg, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks very much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you.